What you're about to uncover isn't just an execution, it's a dissection of the human spirit, methodical and merciless. 76 days locked in darkness. They didn't simply hold Marie Antoinette captive, they studied her, probed her weaknesses, and then they broke her open from the inside. It began with a child barely 8 years old. Forget the guillotine. That steel kiss, a gift compared to what preceded it. They found the fracture in her armor, one vulnerability she couldn't hide, and they drove it deeper, twisting until her whole world collapsed inward. This is the archive of Prisoner 280. Let me show you what silence buries. Paris. July 3, 1793, past midnight. Footsteps crawl through the temple prison corridors, slow, deliberate, closing in like something inevitable. Marie Antoinette lies beside her son, Louis Charles, 8 years old. Her palm rests over his heartbeat. She hasn't looked away from him since they severed his father's head 6 months prior. The door tears open, 6 guards, a parchment decree. They've come for the boy. What unfolds next reverberates through stone for a full hour. A woman stripped of crown and country clawing back into something raw, something animal. She wedges herself against the wood. She screams herself voiceless. She offers herself in his place. But this moment carries weight beyond desperation. This wasn't chaos, this was orchestration. The revolutionaries had discovered something clinical. They couldn't shatter Marie Antoinette through starvation, degradation, or physical torment, but they could weaponize her love. And they were about to turn her own son into the instrument of her collapse, making the guillotine feel almost merciful. Stay close. What rises from these shadows cuts deeper than you're prepared for. Before we descend into what's coming, you need to see Marie Antoinette clearly stripped of myth. The woman they tortured in 1793 bore no resemblance to the caricature they painted. Born Maria Antonia, Vienna, 1755. An Austrian archduchess, the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa. 14 years old when they handed her over to the Dauphin, the future King Louis XVI. This wasn't romance, it was a treaty signed in flesh. Austria needed France, she was currency. The French aristocracy hated her immediately. She was foreign, which made her dangerous. She stumbled through etiquette, her accent mocked, her every gesture dissected with contempt. Even her husband avoided her for years. 7 years before their marriage was consummated, a public humiliation whispered across European courts. So she withdrew into distraction. Towering hairstyles, silk. Candlelit gatherings at the Petit Trianon, her private refuge. Meanwhile, France starved. The people branded her Madame Deficit. Did she ever utter those infamous words, let them eat cake, when told the peasants had no bread? No, pure fabrication. But truth didn't matter once the myth took root. By 1789, when revolution ignited, Marie Antoinette had become France's scapegoat. She wasn't evil, she was foreign, female, and royal, 3 ingredients for perfect villainy. When the monarchy crumbled, the revolutionaries needed someone to absorb centuries of rage. They chose her. But here's what matters. By 1793, she wasn't the naive girl in satin anymore. She was a mother of 4 who'd watched tuberculosis devour her eldest son at 7 years old. She'd witnessed her husband dragged toward the scaffold. She'd spent months entombed in the temple, surrounded by her children, knowing the blade could swing for any of them at any moment. She'd already surrendered everything: crown, freedom, husband, homeland. The revolutionaries were about to teach her that loss has no floor. Let me reconstruct the temple prison for you. This fortress wasn't designed for incarceration. It was engineered to erode the self. A medieval relic in the heart of Paris, erected by the Knights Templar centuries before, damp stone, suffocating air, perpetual cold. After King Louis XVI's execution in January 1793, Marie Antoinette and her 2 surviving children, 14-year-old Marie Therese and 8-year-old Louis Charles, were sealed inside a tower, guarded without pause. Initially, they remained together. Marie Antoinette clung to routine. She tutored them, prayed beside them. Held them through the nights when revolutionary chants bled through the walls. But the guards observed everything, reporting directly to the Committee of Public Safety, the governing body now controlling France. And they noticed patterns. Marie Antoinette could withstand hunger, humiliation, isolation, but threaten her children, and she unraveled. So they began experimenting. First, restricted access. She had to beg permission to see her own son and daughter. Then they embedded guards directly inside their quarters, men stationed in corners, silent, watching, every whispered conversation, every embrace, every tear catalogued. The children were forbidden from speaking German, their mother's native tongue, only French. Even their private language was confiscated, monitored, controlled. Marie Antoinette began deteriorating. Her hair, once light brown, drained to white within weeks, a documented stress response now called Marie Antoinette syndrome. She stopped eating. Internal hemorrhaging began, which she desperately concealed from her captors. But she endured because her children remained within reach. The revolutionaries understood they had to sever that final thread. July 3, 1793, the night that defined her final torment. Let me walk you through the testimonies, the accounts from those who stood witness, because the words are devastating. Around 10 in the evening, Marie Antoinette has just settled Louis Charles into sleep. He's beside her. She refuses separation since his father's beheading. Her daughter Marie Therese and sister-in-law Madame Elizabeth occupy adjacent rooms. Then footsteps, multiple, ascending the tower. The door crashes open. 6 municipal guards led by a man gripping an official decree from the committee. They've come for Louis Charles to re-educate him under the Republic, away from his mother's corrupting influence. Marie Therese later documented this moment in her memoir, describing how her mother transformed in an instant from composed to feral. Marie Antoinette threw herself between the guards and her sleeping child. She seized Louis Charles, clutching him so violently he woke screaming, disoriented. And then she began howling. Not protest, primal, guttural howling. "You will not take him, you will kill me first, he is a child." The guards attempted reason. The order came from the highest authority. Compliance wasn't optional. She didn't care. For 60 minutes, an entire hour, she barricaded the doorway, holding her son, refusing passage. The guards threatened her, threatened the boy, threatened her daughter. They warned that force would be necessary and people would be harmed. Marie Antoinette held her ground. Finally, Madame Elizabeth begged her sister-in-law to stop. The boy was sobbing, terrified. Marie Therese hysterical, the guards growing violent. Marie Antoinette's resistance collapsed. She kissed Louis Charles one final time. She whispered something into his ear, words lost to history forever. Then she watched as 6 men dragged her 8-year-old son down the tower stairs, his screams echoing until they dissolved into nothing. She collapsed on the floor and didn't move for hours. But here's where calculation turns monstrous. They didn't just remove her son, they handed him to Antoine Simon, a radical cobbler specifically selected to destroy the boy's identity. Simon's methods were deliberate cruelty. Louis Charles was locked in a dark, windowless room. He was forced to wear a red revolutionary cap and sing anti-monarchist songs. He was taught to curse his mother, to recite accusations of treason and conspiracy. And when he refused, Simon beat him, starved him, kept him in isolation until the boy's spirit broke. Within weeks, Louis Charles was repeating everything they told him to say, including accusations so monstrous, so vile, they would be weaponized against his mother in the most unthinkable way. Marie Antoinette didn't know the details, but she knew her son was suffering. And there was nothing she could do to save him. That's when they moved her to the conciergerie. On August 1, 1793, less than 1 month after they took her son, guards burst into Marie Antoinette's room in the Temple prison at 2 in the morning. No explanation. No warning, just an order, "You're being moved." They separated her from her daughter and sister-in-law. She begged to say goodbye. They refused. They hauled her down the tower, threw her into a carriage, and drove her through dark Parisian streets toward a place called the Conciergerie. If you know the French Revolution, you recognize that name. The conciergerie earned its nickname, the antechamber to the guillotine. Prisoners entered in their final days before execution. Marie Antoinette wasn't being relocated. She was being staged for death. But the revolutionaries wanted those final days soaked in psychological devastation. She became prisoner number 280. Not former queen, not even a name. A number. Her cell measured roughly 12 feet by 8. Damp stone walls crawling with mold, a thin straw mattress, wooden table, 2 chairs, a chamber pot, 1 candle for light, no windows, only suffocating medieval darkness. And here's the cruelty disguised as mercy. They provided a privacy screen, a folding partition so she could change clothing or use the chamber pot in modesty. Sounds humane, doesn't it? It was theater. Because inside that cell at every moment sat 2 armed guards, positioned in the corner, watching. When she ate, when she slept, when she changed behind that useless screen, when she used the chamber pot, when she prayed, when she wept, unblinking surveillance. This wasn't security, she was a deteriorating middle-aged woman locked in stone. This was psychological dismemberment, designed to strip away her last fragments of dignity. Historical records describe how Marie Antoinette attempted composure. She sat for hours, staring at walls, face blank. The guards reported she barely spoke, barely moved, barely ate. But at night, when candlelight flickered low and she thought they couldn't see, they heard her crying, whispering her son's name. Louis Charles, endless repetition. She developed severe hemorrhaging, likely uterine cancer or stress-induced complications. She bled through her garments and had to request rags from the guards, a humiliation endured before men who offered no mercy. Her hair, completely white now, fell out in clumps. She was 37 years old, she appeared 60. And then the trial arrived. October 14, 1793. 8 in the morning, Marie Antoinette was dragged from her cell to the Revolutionary Tribunal. This wasn't jurisprudence, it was spectacle. The verdict had been written before she entered the room. But the revolutionaries needed theater, justification for public consumption and historical record. The courtroom overflowed, revolutionary officials, journalists, citizens hungry to witness the former queen's humiliation. The prosecutor, Antoine Fouquier-Tinville, prepared charges of treason, conspiracy, financial corruption. Marie Antoinette sat in the defendant's chair, pale, gaunt, dressed in widow's black. For 2 days, accusations rained down that she conspired with Austria, that she drained France's treasury, that she orchestrated counter-revolutionary plots. She responded to each charge with startling composure and intelligence, refuting falsehoods, admitting mistakes without groveling. She refused to break. So Fouquier-Tinville deployed his final, most venomous weapon. He called a witness, Jacques Hebert, a radical journalist. Hebert repeated accusations allegedly extracted from Marie Antoinette's 8-year-old son, Louis Charles. The boy, under relentless coaching from his captors, had claimed his mother committed incest with him. Let that settle into you for a moment. They accused her of sexually abusing her own child, using testimony tortured from an 8-year-old boy in a public courtroom before hundreds of witnesses. The room fell silent. Even the bloodthirsty crowd seemed stunned by the depravity. Marie Antoinette had remained stoic through every insult, every fabrication, every threat. But this shattered her. She stood, her voice, calm until now cracking with raw emotion. I appeal to all the mothers present in this room. Is there among you a single one who would not shudder at such an accusation? She didn't address the judges. She spoke directly to the women in the crowd, mothers, daughters, sisters. For the first time in the trial, she wasn't defending herself as royalty. She was speaking as a mother whose child had been weaponized against her. Nature itself refuses to respond to such a charge made against a mother. I appeal to all mothers who are listening to me. The courtroom erupted. Some women who'd come to jeer were moved to tears. Even revolutionary officials shifted uncomfortably. It was too much, too calculated, too cruel. But Fouquier-Tinville didn't pause. He bulldozed through the remainder of the trial. At 4 in the morning on October 16th, after a trial lasting under 2 days with no credible evidence, Marie Antoinette was found guilty of high treason and crimes against the state. The sentence, death by guillotine. Execution scheduled for later that same day. She was given a few hours in her cell to prepare for death. Back in her cell, dawn approaching, death only hours away, Marie Antoinette was finally given pen, paper, and ink. She didn't compose political defiance. She didn't curse the revolution. She didn't beg for survival. She wrote a letter to her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, still imprisoned in the temple with Marie Antoinette's daughter. The letter stands as one of history's most heartbreaking documents. Let me share portions. It is to you, sister, that I write for the last time. I have just been condemned, not to a shameful death. That is only for criminals, but to rejoin your brother. Innocent like him, I hope to show the same firmness in my last moments. I am calm, as one is when one's conscience reproaches one with nothing. I deeply regret having to abandon my poor children. You know that I lived only for them and for you, my good and tender sister. She went on to forgive her enemies, to ask pardon for any wrongs, begging her sister-in-law to care for her children. May my son never forget his father's last words, which I expressly repeat to him. Let him never seek to avenge our death. She poured every remaining ounce of love onto that page, her final thoughts as mother, as sister, as human facing the void. The letter filled 4 pages. She signed it simply Marie Antoinette. Then she handed it to a guard. Here's the devastating truth. The letter was never delivered. Her jailers intercepted it. It vanished into revolutionary archives. Madame Elizabeth never read it, neither did her daughter. The letter wasn't discovered until decades later, long after everyone Marie Antoinette loved was dead. Her final words to her family died in silence. October 16, 1793, 11 in the morning. The executioner's assistant entered Marie Antoinette's cell and ordered her to prepare. Every step was designed to strip away the final remnants of identity. First, the dress. She was wearing a simple black mourning gown she'd worn since her husband's death. The guard ordered her to remove it and put on a plain white chemise, uniform of the condemned. She asked to change in private. The guard refused. She had to undress in front of the men who'd been watching her for months. Second, the hair. Her hair, now completely white and brittle, was crudely hacked off with shears. No ceremony, no care. Just rough hands and sharp blades severing one of her last physical dignities. Third, the binding. Her hands were tied behind her back with coarse rope, so tight it cut into her wrists. She flinched and said quietly, "You did not bind my husband's hands like this." The guard ignored her. At 11, she was led from the conciergerie into blinding daylight. She'd been in darkness for 76 days. The sunlight hurt. She expected a closed carriage, the small mercy granted her husband. Instead, a rough, open wooden cart called a tumbril awaited, the kind used for transporting animal carcasses. She was forced to climb into the cart and sit on a plank, hands bound, exposed to all of Paris. As the cart lurched forward, thousands lined the route, screaming, jeering, spitting, throwing garbage. One man sat at a window sketching furiously, Jacques-Louis David, the revolutionary artist who'd voted for her death. His drawing survives. It shows a thin, hollow-eyed woman sitting rigidly upright, face a mask of grim dignity as the world howled for her blood. The journey to the Place de la Révolution took over an hour. An hour of public degradation designed to destroy whatever remained of her spirit. It didn't work. At 12:15, the cart stopped at the guillotine. The crowd roared. Marie Antoinette climbed the steps of the scaffold without assistance, legs trembling but head held high. And then, in the final moment of her life, something extraordinary occurred. As she walked toward the plank, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. She stopped, turned to him, and spoke her last words, "Pardon me, sir. I did not mean to do it." An apology to the man about to kill her. A bizarre, surreal act of courtesy, the final reflex of a life lived under royal protocol. But it was more than reflex, it was choice. In the face of absolute degradation, she chose grace. 20 seconds later, the blade fell. The French Revolution wanted to destroy Marie Antoinette, the symbol, the Austrian woman, the wasteful queen, the embodiment of royal excess. They subjected her to unimaginable psychological warfare. They weaponized her own child against her. They stripped her of every dignity, every comfort, every shred of privacy. And in the end, they failed. Because in their obsession with destroying the queen, they accidentally revealed the human being underneath. A mother who fought desperately for her children. A woman who faced monstrous accusations with courage. A person who, even on the guillotine steps, held onto her humanity. They wanted her remembered as the widow Capet, a traitor who deserved everything she received. Instead, history remembers Marie Antoinette, a woman who endured 76 days of calculated cruelty and still found grace enough to apologize to her executioner. That's the part they couldn't take from her. If this story gripped you, hit that subscribe button. We're descending into history's darkest archives every week. And drop a comment after learning what truly unfolded in those final 76 days. How do you see Marie Antoinette now? Villain, victim, or something far more complicated than either label allows?